Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Tonight, we are heading to this building, enormous one of the biggest royal uh, properties, former royal properties in the entire St. Petersburg and beyond. Actually, the only royal castle that we have from the Romanov period, Michael's Castle. Um, Michael's castle doesn't really look like a castle. It doesn't really have, let's say, donjons. It doesn't have the drawn-up bridges. It doesn't really look like an impregnable fortress. But you will see as this tour goes, the next tour is already scheduled, so that indeed there was this idea to build it differently than just a palace. So it's kind of a mix, maybe. So Emperor Paul, in case you forgot how he looked like, Emperor Paul ruled the country only 4 years, 4 days, 4 months and 4 days. And there are lots of mysteries also in connection with different figures, different numbers. But he only built this castle for himself. He actually managed to build it within 4 years as well, uh, after his mother died, and his mother, Empress Catherine the Great, who died in 1796, and she didn't want Paul to be on the throne, as you probably remember. But those who don't remember, I will explain quite briefly. He was the only legitimate son, also of Catherine the Great and her husband, her late husband Peter III, who had been dethroned by her and who died under unclear circumstances in prison. So Emperor Paul knew almost from the very beginning. He was very little at that point when he was just about 8 or 9 when his father passed away. But I would say little by little, the boy understood everything. And he also knew that his mom, who had been appointed as the regent up until the legitimate heir to the throne, that is Paul, would be old enough to, to to actually reign the country and to be crowned. Well, he knew she would never let him anywhere around the throne, and he was waiting patiently. As he was waiting, he was given a very good education. He was sent away to travel multiple times. And as he traveled across Europe, especially after he had, especially after he married, they spent about a little less than 2 years abroad, and this is where he got the idea after visiting medieval castles in Europe. This is when Peter kind of got the idea of what kind of residence he would want to have when an emperor. But the place where the castle is now standing, there used to be a wooden uh, residence of Empress Elizabeth. This is where Paul was born. So we are exactly on the same spot where the castle is now standing. We are in somewhat 1760s, 1770s, and you may have guessed that um, there isn't any palace like that in St. Petersburg anymore. It was taken down. However, it was a royal palace. It was already run down, and nobody really visited it much. And it indeed probably needed uh, some revamping or maybe just a complete reconstruction. So, but Paul needed a formal excuse. So somehow someone just spread kind of a rumor, a story that one of the guards of the palace had a vision, as if Archangel Michael visited him and told him to build here a church. And this became known to Paul the next morning. And Paul got down to actually fulfilling the request of Michael, and he decided to build a residence and to build a church as usual, because every Roman president was supposed to have a small home church, and he he would consecrate the church and the entire castle after Michael, after Archangel Michael. That's the idea. So that was the formal excuse, and all the formalities were taken care of. So yeah, he started. He got down to the construction, and remember I mentioned that Paul was also the head of the kind of the president, the head of the master. That's the word, the master of the Malta Cross Order, and it shows here that this is the official, the royal gala portrait. Paul is wearing the ermine fur, right? And also the crown with the double-headed eagle. You don't see the eagle, but trust me, that the eagle is there. And all of a sudden, the Catholic cross which looked really odd. So even before Paul became official monarch, legitimate one, he was it was odd. He was a big fan of a Prussian army. He was a big fan of Kaiser himself. He admired him, and he he was always, I would say, less favored aristocracy, and also supporting Catholic order and bringing them all the way from Malta because of the tensions in connection with Napoleon, and bringing them to St. Petersburg. And you may remember the tours in Gatchina residence where he built the small compound for the Malta Cross Order Knights. That was something quite odd, and this is just one of multiple reasons why Paul wasn't really that much liked by his contemporaries. And it was gigantic, as you can see, and the castle was mm, one of the biggest construction sites in general in the city in the 19th century. Well, before the St. Isaac's Cathedral would be constructed, but St. Isaac is already the mid 19th century. However, however, the both places are connected. The thing is that when Catherine the Great passed away, that time they were still constructing one of the versions of St. Isaac's Cathedral, and Paul, um, instead of finishing the construction just like his mother wanted, he did the contrary because he didn't love his mom, or he loved her, but it was too complicated. So he would do exactly the opposite. So he took the construction materials. He completely stopped the construction of the St. Isaac's Cathedral, which was supposed to be the main cathedral of the city. And that's exactly what the plan was from Catherine the Great. And he took all the construction materials to the castle. And the castle was made from the bricks that were intended to be part of this main church. And many people thought that he would be cursed because of that he was cursed after having taken the construction material from the church building site. And maybe this could have been one of the reasons he was killed by his, I would say, some of the closest people around him in his administration. He was killed in 1801 in January, and we will talk about his death later on. We will even see the room where it happened. It's quite detailed. The descriptions are quite detailed and quite vivid. They are mentioned in several memoirs, so we will get to that. But yes, this is exactly. And there's one more legend why actually Paul chose this site for the castle, because remember that summer palace that had been here before. So Paul happened to be born in that castle, in that palace, sorry, in that palace, Elizabeth Palace, it was called. So, in Paul would say that I want to die exactly the same place I was born. And this phrase is attributed to him long before the castle was finished. So this sounds like, one of the points actually supporting the idea that Paul had always known its fate? Well, we don't know that. And now we are well, I asked Oleg, my videographer, to film the castle from all the sides because actually the castle is quite eclectic. It's probably the first eclectic building in the entire city. 1801. Actually, the eclecticism would come much later, but it is diverse. Uh, all the four facades look different, and the color of the building itself is quite different. It's well, you may know that there are lots of yellow buildings from the 19th century, first half of the 19th century, mid 19th century. However, this is not the actual yellow color. And the legend has it that the color was, by the way, as long as all the blueprints and the general, I would say, layout of the palace and its design, it was all the idea of Emperor Paul himself. The color is, according to the legend, matches the color of a glove once dropped. Um, it's not like we can testify to that. It's not like we can also defy that. We don't know, but the color is different, and the entire building stands out because of its size, its architecture, its color as well, and the stories. And as you can see right now, the we are passing by some sort of bridges or maybe at least some elevation. It looks like my connectivity is a bit lousy again. In the meantime, I think I can actually take you to another room. So let's give it a try. Whoop, sorry. I had really big issues with the internet last night, so I just don't want to risk anything. Okay, so we are back, um, and I hope this gets better from here. Give me a second. As you can see, that there is a sort of elevation. In fact, there is a moat. These are the small stone bridges, but originally, at times of Emperor Paul, they were wooden, drawn up bridges, exactly the bridges that would open up and close, lift up and will lower down, just like in the medieval castles. So this is clearly one of the features of the, I would say, fully fledged castles. Moats protecting it from all around, and the moats were filled with the water, by the way. So it was not an imitation like in some of the royal residences, the hermitage pavilions, which were obviously just the imitation of kind of secluded spaces. And that's one of the things. And yes, when Paul was there, the bridges would be lifted up. So it indeed gave him some kind of illusion of security. But as you probably know, that you may have realized by now, that didn't really help him. Also, you can see the facade is quite interesting with lots of ornaments. We will talk about it more. But before we see the facade in more details, let's explore also this side of the street. Just next to the castle and the main entrance, by the way, is exactly there where we are. And there is a monument to Emperor Peter the Great. The monument is from 1740s, so way before Paul was even born. But Paul was in a hurry. Paul was in a hurry to build the castle, and it only took him 4 years to build it, which is absolutely incredible um, term because of just the size. And Paul didn't really have much time to also wait for, uh, he just didn't have time to wait for whatsoever. And he just happened to find the monument to Emperor Peter the Great, and he placed it there. It was very important for Paul to show the connection between him and his great grandfather, because indeed Emperor Paul was from the lineage of Peter the Great. That is true. And by the way, on this course, we will be able to talk a little bit about the um, 18th century Romanov dynasty uh, challenges. Let's put it like that. And also, you may remember there is a monument to Peter the Great in St. Petersburg that was founded by Emperor's mom, right? The bronze sportsman. And Paul just wanted to outdo his mom and just to place another monument next to his own residence. And there was kind of a mockery because Catherine the Great herself had zero Russian blood. She was totally a Prussian princess. So, but Paul, he did, was blood and flesh of Peter the Great. Well, at least a little bit. And now as we are approaching the castle, there is another legend, as if Paul was just riding his horse, like just venting it out in St. Petersburg, and and then he heard the sound of the carriage and the horse. He turned around and not the carriage, but he just heard the approaching horse, and he saw a ghost. Well, that's exactly what Paul mentioned to his contemporaries, that he saw someone on a horseback, and this someone just passed by him, and it was almost transparent, something almost transparent. So he thought that that was the ghost of Peter the Great. Oh, well, there were many stories of different sightings. This is not a Halloween tour, but this is just part of the narrative. That's exactly what this is, the flair that the castle just has. So you remember the St. Isaac's Cathedral? That's what it looked like at times of Paul. And Catherine the Great commissioned well, his mom, before she died, she commissioned to rebuild this Isaac's Cathedral. So that's what it looks nowadays. But this will be constructed much later in the it would be changed during the reign of Emperor Paul's son Nicholas. So a very, very different period. And the construction material, as I said, was taken. That that construction was completely frozen, and Paul was cursed for it. Also, I promised to give a little more attention to the facade, so you can see that there are some letters over there. There are 47 letters. These letters were also intended to be originally part for one of the churches in the Smolny convent. Then it was changed, and they were going to use it for the decoration of the facade of St. Isaac's Cathedral. But Paul had a different opinion, and he commissioned to place those letters on the facade, on the main facade of the building. And that's what it says: Domus mea, domus oratorius vacabitur. My house shall be called a house of prayer. So from Isaiah and Matthew. And so speaking of Matthew, we were talking about the very important events that are described in Matthew in a little bit over 30 minutes from now. Just a moment of a promo. I just jumped on this opportunity. And Paul was cursed for it. The legend has it, another legend, that there was a lady, Xenia of St. Petersburg, like a pilgrim, and the legend has it that she was passing by the castle, the construction site at that time, and she said that Emperor Paul would live just as long as the number of the letters on the facade of the castle. So there were 47 letters in Russian alphabet, not in English, not in Latin alphabet, in Russian alphabet. And well, believe it or not, but Paul died when he was 46. Kind of a stretch? Maybe. I don't know. And as we go, you can see the facade, you can see the details, you can see the lines, you can see the construction materials together with the armors. And there are lots of Freemason symbols. all over because Paul was a Freemason along with his position as a master in the Malta Cross Order. And when he had this idea, so which was again, as I said, shaped after his trip to Europe, Paul um, wanted to commemorate his love of the of medieval culture and the Crusader period. So uh, Paul himself was one of the authors of the plan and the interior decoration of the castle. He worked tirelessly on the plan together with the architect Bajenov and then Vincenzo Brenna. And you can see that we are in the courtyard now. It's like a very big, like a very beautiful St. Petersburg, well-shaped courtyard. That's probably the biggest one that we have in St. Petersburg. So you can see the blueprint. So it has an interesting shape, actually 8 angles. And it's just an idea that with this courtyard, Paul kind of tried to commemorate a church that was built in the 12th century by the Hospitallers, and the Hospitallers are connected directly with the Multicross Order. And the church was built by Hospitallers on the Temple Mount, and it was destroyed by the Mamluks later on, subsequently. And Malta Cross Order, well, would always treasure the memory of once having the church. So Paul tried to commemorate that destroyed church in the courtyard of his castle. That's a stretch again. Mm, Well, but this looks very solid to me. Why not? Okay. Well, this is more than one. It's absolutely out of um, out of out of question. There was no any monument to Emperor Paul after he died because he wasn't loved, he wasn't liked, and people tried to forget about him as much as possible. He would always be portrayed in the least favorable manner as a fool on the throne and the dreamer and the underdog of the Romanovs, of the entire Romanov dynasty. So there were no monuments. Only in the recent periods, in the post-Soviet historiography, the they kind of really changed in the attitude towards Paul, and he's not no longer seen like such a fool on the throne. And only in the most recent decades, the monuments to Paul started to emerge in the city and Gatchina in Pavlovsk. The recordings of all those tours are available for my supporters. I did those tours last year. We did like five, at least, episodes on each residence. And you see Paul is sitting on a big throne with a scepter and orb in his hands. He's holding them now, but obviously he didn't have the guts to hold them back then. Even though he had been waiting for it patiently, and he had all the rights to want to be on the throne, but he could not. So that's the story. And you can see how enormous the space is, and you can also see that there is a correlation, right? So we are on the same axis: the main entrance, the monument to Emperor Paul, overlooking the monument to Emperor Peter the Great. Um, so all of that was very well thought through, for sure. And you might have noticed that the facade from behind, I mean, the color of the walls from the courtyard is different. So this is a more pinkish one. And now about the castle itself. Actually, the castle, starting from 1990s, belonged to the Russian Museum, which means that the Russian Museum uses it as one of the venues for the exhibition. And when Oleg was there, well, okay, there are some permanent exhibitions and some temporary ones. So when Oleg was there was quite an interesting temporary exhibition, which I would love to tell you at least a little bit about. But also there is a big permanent exhibition of the portraits of the Romanov family members. One of the biggest collection of Romanov portraits under one roof is in Michael's. Let's first of all see the rooms normally used for the um, for first of all the display of a small model of the castle, because there's no way you can just see all of it. You really need a model, or you need to be taken by a helicopter and hover above the entire area to really understand the scale of the construction. So first we see this, we see the model, and then we see the temporary exhibition in quite a beautiful arrangement. So you can see also the color of the castle in Soviet period was exactly like that. This is still the Soviet model, and then it was restored in the 1990s and given their original color, which was quite different to find because it was not the kind of a mass market color. Wasn't really mass produced. It was not the same color used for all the other institutions. So that's the model, and you can see. So there is a moat, and in fact, the castle is located on an island. You can see that. There used to be water from the four sides. Right now, uh, well, I would say the castle is washed from the three sides. Um, and it doesn't really feel like it's an island anymore. Also because there are temporary bridges over here and it's a dry moat. However, before that, at times of fall, the also the territory around the main entrance, just overlooking the main entrance, was also an island. So there were like two moats. So you see uh, one drawn up bridge over there. There will be another one from that side too. And we are very close to the modern day summer garden. And these are the the trees of the summer garden. So from this side, exactly. So you see another bridge over here. So this is how you would enter, and this is how Paul would enter the castle himself. And also there are there used to be a lot more buildings all around it. There were different services. A building of a size like that needed uh enormous number of people to maintain it, to serve here. And the two buildings over there, it's just it's just 10% of all the buildings that used to be in the area. So since this is part of the Russian Museum, as I said, there are exhibitions held here on a regular basis, and let's see a temporary one. This is not an art history tour, so I won't be really stopping much and giving you very detailed information. But I believe that it is important to know about Grigory Soroka, who was a serf. He was a slave artist. He finished his career in 1840s and 1850s. He was a student of an artist who you may remember, Venezianov, the artist who specialized in portraying the life of simple people. That's him, by the way. So Venezianov, Alexei Venezianov. He would always depict the rural scenes of the villages, Russian peasants, and he was a well-known artist. And Soroka was sent by his master to study art in order that he would return and continue his service to his master. As you probably remember, in 1861, however, slavery was abolished in the Russian Empire. And normally, mm, so the former slaves would be set free and given some plot of land that they could also they could take the credit and use and then pay back to the banks. But Soroka was not able to do that. Also, his master didn't want to let him go, and also because Soroka was in love with with the daughter of his master, Lydia Mansurova, oh, sorry, Milikova, Milikov. He Soroka painted her multiple times, and obviously Milikov did not want his daughter to marry a former serf who had no money at all. And eventually, well, he was explained that there was nothing to hope for, and he committed suicide. So that's the story. So a slave that was never liberated, that was never allowed to love a woman he loved. He was forced to marry a serf woman by his master, and but at least now there are quite a number of artworks, quite an interesting collection of portraits because Soroka specialized in portraits. And you can see the unique style of Soroka and just the story of his life. And he would have painted a lot more. He was extremely talented. And Venezianov considered him one of he actually considered him his best student. And it doesn't really look like the art of mid 19th century. To me, it looks a lot more like the end of the 19th century, kind of the minimalism. But this is mid 19th century, and the person had zero background in art. He just attended the courses by Venezianov, and it was the best time of his life. And again, so it's the life of the peasant, and I love the colors. Again, it looks quite modern to me. It looks like contemporary art. So I just wanted to share with you the stories, and also as we progress with the tours on Michael's Castle, you will notice, and you probably have already noticed that there are not all the rooms have beautiful arrangement, have beautiful interiors and furniture. Actually, after Paul was killed in the castle, I sometimes say it's a palace, but it's a mistake. It's a slip of the tongue, so it's a castle. But sorry for that. I also sometimes may call Emperor Paul Peter, which is also just slip of the tongue. I know that happens to me a lot. So after Paul was killed, which happened 40, 40 days um, after he moved in, the family moved out immediately back to the Winter Palace. And by the way, Michael's castle was not supposed to be a winter residence. Paul wanted it to be his spring residence. Just a lovely triptych by Soroka. I like his art very much. So the family moved out. And for a long time, the castle was standing unattended, and the condition of the castle deteriorated quite quickly, given the weather conditions, given the harsh, humid climate of the city. And well, this is when the first legends of some sightings of ghosts emerged, and eventually the Romanovs decided to use the space. Even though it wasn't finished uh, entirely at that time. We will talk about it later. Um, eh, well, they decided to do like that. They decided to take all the decorations possible to the residences, to all the other Romanov residences, and to give this castle gigantic space to an educational facility and a school of engineers, and also the library, the marine library. So what you see on the main staircase is the collection of marbles, also a statue Emperor Paul was the avid collector of artworks, especially he liked statues, and maybe he also wanted to be even more like Peter the Great, who also commissioned hundreds of statues from Italy and from Greece, and brought them all to St. Petersburg and put them all in the summer garden. And well, Paul would do something very similar. Maybe in a way he tried to, um, well, not necessarily copy, but clearly follow the guidelines of Emperor Peter the Great. So the quite a gigantic staircase, and it's interesting that exactly here we kind of uh, actually transitioning from this castle as a royal residence to this castle as a home to an engineering school. Because in the 1810s, in this castle was opened an engineering school, and one of the most uh, famous of its students was Fyodor Dostoevsky. About him, I gave a tour 2 weeks ago, I believe, and now we are entering the permanent exhibition on the history of the Romanovs. And the first thing that kind of really catches your eyes is the portrait of Emperor Peter the Great. Sorry, I didn't know if I wanted to yawn or to sneeze, so I guess I did both. Sorry. So this is um quite an unusual portrait of Peter. Peter already on his deathbed, but Ivan Nikitin. Um, as you may remember from my previous tour, that Peter worked himself to death. He was a workaholic, for sure, and his health had been undermined by multiple military campaigns, and also being at sea and at any weather was also quite a challenge for his health. So eventually, he died in 1725, and by that time, he had already been suffering from several uh, diseases such as the kidney issue. He had some kidney issues, and eventually he died from a kidney failure. However, there were obviously multiple versions, and Paul himself, who was a big fan of conspiracy theories in general, he actually believed that Peter was helped to go away. But who are we to know? It's just, there would always be multiple versions of an untimely death of all the mornings. And after Peter the Great died, his wife, Catherine the First, was chosen by the council to rule the country. This is, by the way, a rare portrait of, believe it or not, Emperor Peter the Great, future Peter the Great, Pyotr Alexeyevich, and his sister Natalia, who he was very close with till the end. And they're here portrayed as gods, as Apollo and Diana by Louis Caravac. They were the French artist, and so this kind of also gives us a bit more understanding of the family bonds of Peter the Great. And it is important. It was important for Paul himself because, as I said, for Paul it was important that lineage, and Paul felt a little bit like Peter the Great because he didn't really have much support and many friends and people. I would say largely did not approve of Peter's actions and how Peter traveled and how he changed life in the country upside down and all these things. So Paul would always draw this parallel and compare himself to Peter, how brave he was, how he couldn't care less about what others thought, and well, all these things. And by the way, this is a very rare thing there. I didn't know they have it. This is the silver dish and the silver glass bottle. Those are the gifts for the coronation ceremony of Peter the Great's wife, Catherine the First. And as you see, Now that we are exploring this exhibition, there are no decorations in the room. This is supposed to be a castle, quite a quite a big one, and the plan was to make it the most luxurious of the properties of the Romanovs. But no, we don't see that. There are beautiful gala rooms. Trust me, we will be getting there next time. But the question is, what happened? When the engineering school moved in around 1910, they were done a lot of work to prepare the castle for the educational facility. Some rooms would be split into several rooms, and as I said, the Romanovs, when they decided to go back to the Winter Palace, they took everything that they could have taken with them. Doorknobs, beautiful stucco decorations, artwork that uh, started to be brought into already at that point, and they just left. So I would say that Romanovs themselves looted their own property. When they moved in a hurry in February, um, they um, it was the place was still damp and plaster uh, hadn't dried by then, and there was a thick fog all around the castle. The bed linen would be always damp. It would be very difficult to breathe. Imagine breathing the humid air with the particles of plaster in it. Not really fun. So some children eventually and some family members eventually would go back to the Winter Palace, but not everyone wanted to make Paul angry. So some people still did stay, and also the servants. Well, they couldn't just leave. They couldn't just say, "Hey, I'm not going to stay here. Sorry, you breathe on your own." Obviously not. And there are lots of memoirs of saying that so there had already been some artworks on the walls, and as I said, Paul had an idea of turning it into the another version of the Hermitage, maybe even better than that. We don't know. So the question is, mm, was it okay for for the artwork to be placed in such conditions? People claim that they saw even the thick layers of ice on artworks. This is how cold it was. And it was springtime, and it was a spring residence, and the stoves didn't help much. So that was the reality, and exactly due to that fog inside the castle, um, it maybe that actually contributed to why Paul never really escaped because they claim that there is quite a wide network of underground canals. Well, and not the canals, like passageways, which would lead to the areas outside of in the city. Just anywhere in the city, there are multiple canal passageways, and but they haven't been found. We know for sure that in Paul's bedroom there was also the secret passage, and but it was sealed, and most probably by him before that. So we don't know. But yes, he was killed in his castle, and that didn't really serve that function, so it was violated. Needless to say, however, that some of the plotters, because it was quite a big group of people, that about half of them, about a dozen of people, actually lost. Yeah, they got lost on their way upstairs to the bedroom of Emperor Paul, and so they were like group of
like a handful of people that were involved um, with the murder in particular. So this is where I would like to wrap this part of the tour. So we walked around the castle. We've learned the history uh, prior to the construction, also what happened after Paul died, and next time we'll start with the gala rooms, with the throne rooms, and if time permits, we'll even see the quite a beautiful church building. And also we'll find out what else happened in the walls of this castle. By the way, this is the Romanov tree, the genealogy, and it dates back to 1730s, and that's quite an interesting artwork. The castle has a very special place in general in the city and in the hearts of the locals. Also, the link to support me, you can be PayPal or you could buy me a coffee, which I would appreciate, whichever works for you. And I will see you in 2 minutes from now in Israel. Thank you so much, and I'll see you. The link is there. Bye bye.